China orders tighten the belt, cycling commutes, restrictions on water and paper use. Fierce tech war, several Chinese medical researchers denied entry to U.S. U.S. issues final ultimatum, experts analyzed CCP's biggest internal fears. Chinese nationals charged with conspiracy to export U.S. technology. It's all covered in today's China Truths. China orders tighten the belt, cycling commutes, restrictions on water and paper use. China's economy faces a severe crisis, with soaring local debt. In December last year, at the Central Economic Work Conference, Xi Jinping directed governmental bodies to brace for long-term austerity. The Ministry of Finance then formalized this directive, intensifying measures to curb official spending and reduce general expenditures across local governments. As a result, officials throughout China vie to demonstrate their commitment to the austerity campaign. According to a report from the Wall Street Journal on April 25, at least 21 Chinese provincial governments have slashed their vehicle budgets. Guizhou's governor vowed to cut the province's government operating costs by 15%. Yunnan's Statistical Bureau requires that air conditioning be set no lower than 26 degrees Celsius in summer. Inner Mongolia's administration has called for minimizing new equipment purchases and maximizing the reuse and repair of items like desks and computers. Yibin, a southwestern city, has instructed officials to use lower-grade paper for daily document printing. Numerous local authorities request the use of public transportation, opting for economical stationery, and implementing cost-saving practices like double-sided and black and white printing. Leaders are also urged to exemplify frugality by not wasting food, minimizing travel, and reusing government vehicles and office equipment. A state-owned iron foundry in Yunnan has called on its employees to cut back on their annual water consumption and to bring their own water bottles to work. Meanwhile, a county in northern Inner Mongolia has introduced a green transportation policy, promoting walking for short trips and biking for medium distances. Furthermore, the CCP promotes frugality as part of its cultural and revolutionary heritage, citing historical figures like Mao Zedong, who famously patched his pajamas 73 times, and Chen Yun, a significant Chinese political leader and economist, who used the same leather suitcase for over 6 decades. Experts caution that these measures are likely only a temporary fix. Historian Li Yuanhua, residing in Australia, criticizes the CCP's approach as superficial and influenced by central mandates rather than effective governance. He suggests that genuine fiscal relief could be achieved by significantly reducing bureaucratic expenditures. Mr. Li adds that without reductions in substantial areas like stability maintenance and military spending, the minor cutbacks are merely performative. Former Beijing lawyer Li Jianping, now chair of the Federation for a Democratic China in Canada, warns that reducing government spending could precipitate a vicious cycle, further shrinking the economy and exacerbating the crisis. Fierce tech war, several Chinese medical researchers denied entry to U.S. The U.S.-China technology conflict is intensifying, marked by an increasing number of Chinese researchers at U.S. universities being denied entry or deported. These researchers, particularly in the medical sciences, face extensive questioning and checks on their electronic devices by customs officers, citing national security concerns. The exact scale of these denials is unclear as the U.S. Customs and Border Protection, CBP, does not provide detailed data, though they confirm that all international travelers, including U.S. citizens, are subject to inspections. Science magazine reports that in recent months, several Chinese PhD students have been barred from re-entering the U.S. after visiting their home country, with some facing immediate deportation and up to a 5-year ban. These actions reflect broader tensions as the Chinese Communist Party seeks to dominate global technology sectors, combining military and civilian efforts and recruiting talent to acquire Western technologies. In response, the U.S. has tightened export controls on key technologies like semiconductors and increased security vetting for Chinese academics, focusing heavily on their fields of study. A Chinese scientist, who was using artificial intelligence to study the effects of vaccines, reported that he was denied entry at Boston Logan International Airport while en route to a postdoctoral fellowship at Harvard Medical School. According to The Guardian, Harvard Medical School refused to verify or discuss the details of individual cases. Additionally, in January of this year, the Chinese state-controlled Global Times highlighted the case of another Chinese researcher who was turned away when he planned to work at the National Cancer Institute, part of the U.S. National Institutes of Health. Commenting on this issue, Edward Guo, a biomedical engineering professor at Columbia University, cautioned that, forget about coming to the U.S. to study artificial intelligence. The CCP's military-civil fusion strategy. In May 2020, the Trump administration issued Proclamation No. 10043, which restricts entry to the United States for Chinese students and scholars associated with the Chinese military. This prohibition applies to those holding F visas, student visas, and J visas, visiting scholar visas, but does not include undergraduates. This executive order also allows U.S. Customs and Border Protection, CBP, to deny entry to Chinese graduate students and postdoctoral researchers. This action is part of the broader response to the CCP's military-civil fusion strategy, a policy aimed at creating the world's most technologically advanced military by integrating civilian research with military applications. This strategy is also a key reason why the U.S.-China Science and Technology Agreement, established in 1979 to frame scientific cooperation, has not been consistently updated. The U.S. State Department contends that the CCP acquires vital technologies using a mix of legal and illegal methods, including investing in private enterprises, recruitment programs targeting talents, manipulating academic and research partnerships for military advantages, enforced technology transfers, espionage, and direct theft. However, Chinese students continue to be the largest international student group in the U.S. Following Proclamation No. 10043, the U.S. State Department had canceled over 1,000 visas for Chinese citizens by fall 2020 and denied 1,964 visa applications in fiscal year 2021, which was about 2% of all visas issued to Chinese students that year. As the COVID-19 pandemic lessened, the U.S. issued 90,301 F-1 visas and 3,048 J-1 visas to Chinese students. In 2022, this number increased to over 155,000 visas, and in 2023, it rose further to 289,526. For 13 consecutive years, Chinese students have been the largest group of international students in the U.S. In contrast, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken highlighted in a Beijing speech on April 26 that over 290,000 Chinese students are currently studying in the U.S., compared to fewer than 900 Americans studying in China. This is a significant drop from the 15,000 Americans who studied there 10 years ago. U.S. issues final ultimatum, experts analyzed CCP's biggest internal fears. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken's recent visit to China has received extensive media coverage. The Epoch Times reported that Blinken met with CCP leader Xi Jinping and set new boundaries during this visit. According to Xinhua, the CCP's official agency, both nations agreed on 5 key points: to stabilize and grow Sino-U.S. ties, to continue high-level and other exchanges, to welcome each other's students, to consult on global and regional issues, and to strengthen envoy communications. Professor Chen Bingkui of National Chengchi University told the Epoch Times that among the consensuses, the third point marked a significant shift, showing that China is now open to discussions it previously avoided. However, China expert Wang Yi noted that the CCP's summary of the 5 consensuses does little to bolster the broader Sino-U.S. relationship. They merely suggest ongoing dialogue and de-escalation to reassure other nations. Mr. Wang stated, actually, Blinken's main aim wasn't to seek relaxation or agreement, but to set clear limits with the CCP. Blinken concluded his trip with a press briefing at the U.S. Embassy and warned that the U.S. and its allies are ready to act if Beijing doesn't alter its course, noting existing sanctions and controls on over 100 Chinese entities. Commenting on that, Mr. Wang Yi emphasized, Blinken was explicit: if you support Russia's military sector and prolong the war, we'll take firm steps. The US has clearly drawn this line, and it's not just posturing. US and Europe issue new warning: CCP remains low-key. As previously reported, prior to his visit to China, it was reported by the Wall Street Journal that the US is drafting sanctions to cut off certain Chinese banks from the global financial system, aiming to block the Chinese Communist Party's support for Russia's military production. Mr. Wang Yi described this move not as a mere threat, but as a definitive action by the US, emphasizing the strategic communication by American officials to potentially use diplomacy to avert this outcome, but also stating that action will be taken if necessary changes are not made. At the G7 summit in Italy, Secretary of State Antony Blinken addressed the CCP's military support for Ukraine, with the West uniting to issue a warning against such actions. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg also issued a stark warning to Beijing, urging it to halt its support for Russia in order to maintain good relations with the West, and making it clear that Beijing cannot support both sides. Blinken had a 6-hour meeting with Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi before meeting President Xi Jinping. Wang Yi noted that despite substantial discussions, the US currently holds a stronger diplomatic position, resulting in an unprecedentedly humble approach by the CCP this time. Future of US-China relations: experts point to CCP's biggest fear. Mr. Wang Yi remarked, while the situation seems calm on the surface with ongoing dialogues, beneath that, the strategic rivalry between the two nations is actually more intense. Right from the start, the Biden administration has identified the Chinese Communist Party as the sole regime with both the capability and the intent to alter the global order and rules. This has established the tone for US-China relations, unless the CCP is overthrown and China experiences earth-shaking changes. Yu Zongji points out, the new Cold War-like global climate is particularly disadvantageous for Beijing. Under this new Cold War framework, the CCP finds itself isolated and encircled, reminiscent of the past containment strategy against the Soviet Union, marking a clash between authoritarianism and democracy. This confrontation inevitably leads to each side consolidating their ranks. Democratic countries are coming together more strongly to face authoritarian regimes. This includes the newly termed Axis of Evil, a group led by the CCP along with Russia, Iran, North Korea, and Pakistan. Understandably, the CCP is deeply concerned as the new Cold War practically besieges it from all directions. Prior to his China visit, Blinken's attendance at the G7 summit represented a rallying of democratic nations within this new Cold War framework. The realignment is evident across the First Island chain, with shifts in South Korea and the Philippines, and Japan's unwavering position, reflecting Beijing's profound anxieties. According to Yu Zongji, the so-called new Cold War surrounding China is a US-designed strategic environment aimed at curbing the CCP's rise. This framework has the potential to be hugely impactful and is seen internally as the CCP's biggest fear. Chinese nationals charged with conspiracy to export US technology. The U.S. Department of Justice has charged 2 Chinese nationals who allegedly plotted to export U.S. technology to advance the People's Republic of China's military operations. In detail, Han Li, 44, and Lin Chen, 64, have been charged with several counts of conspiracy to violate the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, IEEPA, in addition to the Export Administration Regulations, EAR, for attempting to export a machine used to process silicon microchips. U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of California Ismail Ramsey said in a press release, the export restrictions at issue in this case were put in place to prevent the illicit procurement of commodities and technologies for unauthorized military end use in the People's Republic of China. Assistant Attorney General Matthew Olson explained that the defendants sought to evade export controls to obtain U.S. semiconductors that they were then going to ship to a Chinese company. In 2014, the Department of Commerce placed restrictions on the Chengdu Jiastone Technology Company, CGTC, based in China, which made it ineligible to receive exports of certain U.S. technologies and services. The DOJ said, as alleged in the indictment, between at least May 2015 and August 2018, Li and Chen conspired to evade the export restrictions imposed by the Department of Commerce on CGTC by using intermediary companies. Specifically, the defendants sought to illegally obtain for CGTC a DTX-150 automatic diamond scriber breaker machine from Dynatex International, a Santa Rosa, California company. The DOJ said, the defendants sought to obtain the machine through an intermediary company called Jiangsu Hantang International, JHI, which they fraudulently represented as the purchaser and end user, a proxy they fraudulently represented as the purchaser and end user. To avoid detection, Li and Chen instructed Dynatex International to ensure that the export information associated with the sale did not list CGTC as the ultimate consignee of the shipment. Chen was arrested in Chicago on April 24. Li, the DOJ said, is suspected to be in China. Both Li and Chen are charged with counts of conspiracy to violate IEEPA, which carries a sentence of up to 20 years in prison and a $1 million fine, and a count of false electronic export information activities, which carries a sentence of up to 5 years in prison and a $250,000 fine. They are also charged on a count of smuggling, which carries a sentence of up to 10 years in prison and a $250,000 fine, and IEEPA violations, which carry a sentence of up to 20 years in prison and a $1 million fine. Brent Burmester, a special agent in charge with the Department of Commerce, said stopping the flow of U.S. semiconductor technology that goes to advance the People's Republic of China's military modernization efforts is key to protecting the country's national security. FBI Special Agent in charge Robert Tripp suggested that businesses in the U.S. should establish a relationship with their local FBI field office to help protect against the pervasive threat of criminals looking to steal American technology. In a 2023 report on FBI Director Christopher Wray's roundtable discussion on CBS News, Mr. Wray called the Chinese Communist Party the defining threat of this generation. He said in the discussion that the FBI has 2,000 active investigations just related to the Chinese government's effort to steal information. Don't forget to leave a comment in the section below to share your opinions on today's topic with us. Make sure to like and subscribe to see more interesting topics from China Truths.